The cafe lights glowed against the rain-slick streets of downtown, painting everything in soft gold. Inside, laughter hummed around tables filled with couples leaning close over coffee. But at the far end, by the window streaked with raindrops, sat a man alone. His hands were calloused, his jacket worn thin at the elbows, his shoes still carrying traces of the mop water from an hour ago. His name was Henry. The city knew him as a janitor who worked nights at the same company whose people now filled this cafe. Yet tonight, he wasn't here to clean. He was here for a blind date. The waiter hesitated before approaching, glancing at the man's patched sleeve and the folded paper on the table, a small bouquet sketch and a note that read, "She said she'd wear yellow." Henry smiled faintly, his eyes gentle but uncertain, like someone unused to being looked at for who he really was. Outside, the rain deepened. Inside, a few heads turned. The whispers began. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." Henry's heart beat fast. He wasn't used to waiting for anyone. People usually passed him by, or gave short nods when he emptied trash bins. But this time, someone had agreed to meet him. Her name was Lena. They'd met online. She didn't know he was a janitor. Not yet. He didn't lie. Exactly. He just didn't mention it. When she entered the cafe, she looked like sunlight had stepped out of the clouds. Yellow dress, hair still damp from rain, eyes scanning the room. Then they met his. For a brief second, he forgot every cruel whisper he'd ever heard. "Henry?" she asked, walking closer. He stood, awkwardly brushing his sleeves. "Hi, you made it." Her smile was warm at first, until she noticed a mop bucket by the door, the one he had left there earlier when he finished his shift. Someone whispered, "That's a janitor from the building." Lena froze. Confusion flickered, then discomfort. And just like that, the glow around her dimmed. Henry's voice faltered. I thought maybe we could grab coffee." But she was already glancing toward a table of suited men, employees from his building, who were smirking, trying not to laugh. One of them, Ryan, leaned toward his friends. Didn't know janitors could afford dating apps. The laughter was quiet, but it was enough to make Henry's hand shake. Lena tried to smile, tried to hide the shame flushing her face, but the damage was done. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Henry sat down, trying to steady his breath. "You don't have to stay," he said softly. Lena hesitated. Her voice trembled. I didn't know." "It's okay," he replied. "People rarely do." Ryan's laughter echoed again, louder this time. "Careful, man. You'll leave a stain on her dress." That was when the cafe door opened again. A hush followed. A man in a charcoal coat walked in, tall, composed, the kind of presence that silences a room without trying. Mr. Collins, the CEO, the same man those laughing employees answered to every day. He stopped near the door, scanning the room. His gaze landed on Henry, then on Ryan's table. The smirk froze on Ryan's face. "Evening, Henry," Mr. Collins said, his tone calm but heavy with meaning. "Didn't expect to see you off duty." Henry's lips parted, surprised. "Good evening. So." Mr. Collins smiled faintly. "You finished up early." "Yes, sir. I thought I'd have a coffee." "Good." The CEO nodded, then turned to Ryan. "And I see my team is here too." Ryan swallowed. "Why, yes, sir." The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the espresso machine seemed to hush. Mr. Collins's eyes shifted between Henry and the laughing group. "Funny thing," he said quietly, "how the people who keep our floors clean often carry more dignity than the ones who walk over them." The room felt smaller. Lena's cheeks turned red, guilt burning through her expression. Henry looked down, unsure whether to stay or disappear. "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would?" "Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Lena sat back down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "They shouldn't have said that." Henry gave a small smile. "It's all right. People show who they are when they think no one's watching. But someone was watching, and Mr. Collins wasn't done. He stepped closer, his shoes echoing on the polished floor Henry had mopped 100 times before. "Ryan," he said evenly, "how long have you been with my company?" 2 years, so. Then you've had 2 years to learn how to treat people. I suggest you start tonight. No one moved. The cafe air hung heavy with truth and shame. Outside, the rain softened, as if the storm itself had listened. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he muttered a quiet, "Yes, sir," before lowering his eyes. The laughter that had filled the cafe minutes ago had turned to suffocating silence. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, pretending to check their phones, pretending they hadn't just witnessed humiliation dressed as humor. Mr. Collins didn't linger. He gave Henry a small nod, one that meant something deeper than politeness, and left through the same door he came in. The sound of the bell above it faded slowly, but its echo stayed in every heart left behind. Henry stared at his untouched cup. The steam had faded, leaving only reflection, a faint version of himself staring back. The janitor who tried to be more than his job, just for one night. Lena watched him quietly. "Henry, I didn't mean to." He stopped her with a gentle shake of his head. "You don't owe me an apology. Maybe it's better this way. You deserve someone you can introduce without explaining." Her throat tightened. "That's not fair. You just didn't expect me," he said softly. "It's all right. I don't fit the picture people hope for." He stood, gathering his jacket. The rain had stopped now, and the streetlights painted soft halos on the wet road. He left a few crumpled bills under his cup, enough to cover both drinks, though he'd barely taken a sip. As he walked out, Lena watched him disappear into the rain's mist. She felt something inside her crack open. Guilt, yes, but also something else. A quiet recognition of how easy it was to wound someone who asked for nothing but honesty. Across the room, Ryan's friend sat frozen. One of them muttered, "Man, he's just a janitor. Why is everyone acting like?" Ryan cut him off, his voice low, "Because the CEO just stood up for him. That says something." Outside, Henry walked home through the drizzle. The city shimmered like broken glass beneath his footsteps. He passed people laughing under umbrellas, holding hands, living in a world he often watched from the sidelines. When he reached his small apartment, a single room with a flickering lamp and a plant that refused to die, he sat by the window and pulled out an old notebook. Its pages were worn, edges stained from coffee and cleaning chemicals. Inside were sketches of people, faces, light falling through windows, drawn during his lunch breaks when the building was quiet. He flipped to a page halfway through, a drawing of the same cafe, from memory, only brighter. In the sketch, no one was laughing. In that version, everyone saw him. He smiled faintly. Then he closed the book, whispering to himself, "Someday." Lena lay awake that night, her mind restless. She kept replaying the moment, his trembling voice, the way he still paid for her drink, the calm dignity in his eyes. She opened her phone and searched his name. Nothing came up except a few work profiles and an old staff list from the company building. No social media, no online footprints. Just a name, simple and unseen. But then something caught her eye, a small link buried in the company's internal bulletin from months ago. Maintenance staff member Henry Blake donated part of his savings to the children's book drive after hours. Refused recognition. Lena stared at the line, her heart heavy with quiet shame. The next morning, Henry returned to work. Same hallway, same mop, same faces avoiding eye contact. But there was something new in the air, a faint hum of guilt and respect, unspoken but present. Ryan avoided him entirely. The others whispered, "That's the guy the CEO defended." At lunch, Henry sat alone in the maintenance room, unwrapping his sandwich. He wasn't angry, just tired. He'd spent a lifetime being invisible, and one night of visibility had burned more than years of silence ever could. Yet when he took a bite, his lips curved slightly upward. Maybe being seen, even for the wrong reason, was better than never being seen at all. That same afternoon, Mr. Collins stopped by the janitor's closet. "Henry," he said, knocking gently. "Got a minute?" Henry stood quickly. "Of course, sir. Sorry, I didn't expect." Mr. Collins smiled. Don't apologize. I just wanted to say, thank you. Henry frowned. For what? For reminding my team that work doesn't wear uniform. Henry blinked, unsure what to say. I've watched you for years, Collins continued. You stay late, fix things no one notices, treat everyone with decency. You carry pride in silence. I respect that. Henry's voice cracked. I just do my job. Exactly, the CEO said softly. And you do it with more heart than most people do theirs. If you were in Henry's shoes, would you have kept showing up every day with that same quiet dignity? Tell me honestly in the comments. Or hit like if you think unseen effort deserves recognition too. Mr. Collins handed Henry a small card. There's a meeting tomorrow morning. Be there. Dress comfortable, not formal. You'll understand why. Henry looked at the card, simple, embossed with the company's logo. He didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. As Collins walked away, Henry stood frozen in the doorway, card trembling slightly in his hand. Outside, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, lighting the holes he cleaned 1,000 times. But today, they gleamed differently, not because of his work, but because for once, the light had found him too. That night, Henry barely slept. The card from Mr. Collins lay on his table beside the notebook of sketches, its corners catching the soft lamplight. He turned it over again and again, no clues, just a date, a time, and a conference room number. He didn't own anything nice. His best shirt was clean but faded at the collar. He ironed it twice anyway, pressing out the small wrinkles like they mattered more than he did. Morning came quietly. He caught the early bus, sitting by the window, watching the city wake, delivery trucks rumbling, kids with backpacks racing down sidewalks. He envied their unthinking purpose. When he arrived, the building's glass doors reflected his own hesitant figure back at him. Inside, everyone was rushing. Meetings, coffee runs, chatter about deadlines, no one noticing the janitor clutching a playing card like it was a golden ticket. The elevator ride felt endless. Floor numbers blinked like judgment. When it opened, he stepped into the top floor, a place he had only ever cleaned, never entered during daylight. The receptionist smiled uncertainly. You're Henry Blake, right? Mr. Collins is expecting you. He nodded, voice small. Yes. As she led him down the corridor, Henry saw his reflection in the polished glass, the same tired man, yet somehow different. Nervous, expectant, human. The door to the conference room opened, revealing a long table filled with department heads, Ryan among them, eyes wide. Mr. Collins stood at the front, sleeves rolled, tone casual but commanding. Morning, everyone. Before we begin, I want to introduce someone. Ryan shifted in his chair, realizing what was happening. This is Henry Blake, the CEO said. He's been part of this company longer than most of you. He's worked nights you'll never remember, cleaned floors you'll never thank him for, and made sure this building runs so you can walk in proud every morning. Henry froze, every word heavy as rain against his chest. He's also an artist, Collins continued, lifting a small sketchbook from the table. Henry's sketchbook. Henry gasped quietly. Sir, how did you? You left it in the break room once, Collins said kindly. I saw it and recognized something rare, perspective. He opened it, revealing pages filled with scenes from the building, janitors laughing, a secretary comforting someone, the glow of the night lights across polished floors. It wasn't just art, it was empathy in pencil form. These drawings reminded me of what we forget, the quiet dignity behind every job here, Collins said. So we're launching an internal campaign, Faces of Our Foundation. Photos, sketches, stories. And Henry, I want your art to lead it. The room was silent. Ryan's pen dropped, rolling across the table. Henry stammered, Sir, I'm just a janitor. Collins smiled. No, Henry, you're the soul of this place. Henry's eyes burned, his throat tight. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Collins replied gently. Ryan cleared his throat. Sir, may I speak? Collins nodded. Ryan stood, uneasy. I owe you an apology. Henry, what I said at the cafe, it was cruel. I thought your work made you less. But seeing your drawings, seeing how you see us, it makes me realize how blind I've been. Henry's gaze softened. Thank you, Ryan. I've been called worse than words. But apologies, those are rare. Colin smiled faintly. Maybe we should make respect less rare around here. The team chuckled softly, a small, human sound after too much pride. Later that day, Henry found himself standing on the building's rooftop. The sky stretched open, washed clean by sunlight. He opened his sketchbook again. Only this time, the pages would no longer be hidden in the dark. He drew slowly, capturing the skyline, the light falling across glass towers, the reflection of possibility. For the first time, he wasn't drawing to escape his world. He was drawing to show it. Lena's message arrived that evening. Henry, I saw the company post about your project. I just wanted to say I was wrong. About everything. You deserve better than how I treated you. He read the message 3 times, fingers trembling. Then he smiled, typing back slowly. People make mistakes. Thank you for saying that. Maybe we could meet again, she replied. No cameras, no noise. Just coffee. He hesitated, the kind of pause that comes when old wounds meet new chances. Then he typed, all right, but this time I'll bring the art. You bring the yellow dress. If you've ever lost faith in second chances, let this remind you, grace doesn't always arrive with apologies. Sometimes it walks in quietly wearing hope. Tell me, have you ever been given another chance you didn't expect? Right? Yes, if you believe in them too. Henry placed the phone down and looked around his small room. Same peeling paint, same flickering bulb, but everything felt lighter. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. He was becoming seen. And as the night deepened, his heart whispered what words couldn't. Maybe kindness really does come full circle. A week later, the company's atrium, once just marble floors and echoing footsteps, was transformed. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, illuminating easels lined in perfect symmetry. Every canvas told a story. The security guard handing umbrellas to strangers, the cook laughing behind the cafeteria counter, the janitor sweeping under the late glow of monitors. At the center stood a large frame sketch, Henry's favorite. It showed a reflection of the building in a puddle, distorted but beautiful. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Dignity lives quietly." Employees trickled in, whispering, surprised. Some smiled. Some wiped at their eyes without understanding why. The quiet hum of admiration replaced the usual tap of shoes and clicks of keyboards. Henry stood off to the side, in his neatly pressed shirt, feeling out of place but too grateful to care. Ryan approached, holding 2 coffees. Thought I'd return the gesture, Ryan said, handing one to him. Henry chuckled. Thanks. Didn't think I'd see the day the office star brings me coffee. Ryan smiled awkwardly. Yeah, well, guess I owed you more than a latte. They both laughed softly. The air between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was healing. As people gathered, Mr. Collins stepped up to the small stage near the elevators. When we talk about success, he began, we picture boardrooms, deals, numbers. But success doesn't always look like that. Sometimes, it looks like a man who shows up every night to keep our world running while no one's watching. He gestured toward Henry. We're proud to announce that this art series, Faces of Our Foundation, will be exhibited publicly next month, sponsored by our company. Because these faces aren't just staff. They're the story of who we are. Applause filled the room. Henry stood frozen, overwhelmed. For years he'd been the background of other people's stories. Now he was part of the frame. Lena watched from the back of the crowd. She'd come quietly, blending in. Her heart raced when she saw him up there, humble, shy, trying not to cry. She bit her lip, whispering to herself, You did it, Henry. After the applause faded, she approached him slowly. He turned, surprised. Lena, I couldn't stay away, she said softly. I wanted to see you, see this. Henry smiled. It's strange, isn't it? How life turns on a single night. She nodded. You were right. People show who they are when they think no one's watching. You showed grace. I just kept cleaning, he replied gently. Turns out, that's all grace really is, keeping something alive when it's easier to leave it dainty. Lena laughed through tears. You still talk like an artist. I talk like a janitor, he said with a grin. But maybe that's the same thing. Mr. Collins joined them, his voice warm. Glad you came. Lena, you were there that night too, weren't you? She nodded, embarrassed. Yes, sir. I didn't behave well. Collins smiled. Then it seems we all learned something that night. He turned to Henry. The gallery showing's set for next Friday. We'll invite local press, charity partners, and schools. You'll open it. Me? Henry's voice cracked. I can't speak in front of. You'll do fine, Collins said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You've been speaking for years, just through drawings instead of words. Henry swallowed hard. Thank you, so. As the crowd dispersed, Henry and Lena walked outside. The sun was setting behind the tall glass, casting reflections across the wet pavement. They paused, looking at the city lights flickering to life, a mirror of his sketches. Lena whispered, You changed things in there. Henry shook his head. No, I just held up a mirror. If you're watching this, take a moment. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. They walked together in silence, the sound of the city soft around them. For once, Henry didn't feel like he didn't belong to it. He was part of its rhythm, quiet, essential, real. Back in his apartment, he packed away the mop bucket and set his sketchbook beside his bed. He opened it to a blank page, pen hovering in midair. Then he wrote just one line across the bottom. Sometimes, the people who clean the world are the ones who make it worth seeing. He closed it gently, smiling. The next morning brought messages from employees. Thank yous, stories, even apologies. One woman wrote, My dad was a janitor. You reminded me of him. Another said, I never thought about who cleans up after my success. Henry read each one carefully, heart swelling with quiet joy. As he walked through the halls that day, people nodded, greeted him, smiled. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. And maybe that was enough. But fate wasn't done writing his story yet. Because in just a few days, that exhibition, the one he never dreamed would exist, would change more lives than his own. The night of the gallery arrived with a scent of fresh paint and polished floors, a place Henry would have once cleaned, now opening in his honor. The sign outside read simply, Faces of Our Foundation, Art by Henry Blake. He stood just beyond the doors, nervous hands tucked in the pockets of his only suit. The air smelled of flowers and new beginnings. Through the glass, he could see guests mingling, executives, local artists, even families with children pointing at the drawings. Ryan approached, dressed sharply but humbler than usual. You ready, man? Henry exhaled. As ready as someone who used to mop these floors can be. Ryan smiled. Then that makes you more ready than any of us. They walked inside together. Applause rippled across the room as Henry entered, hesitant, bashful. Mr. Collins stood near the podium, waiting. Cameras flashed softly. When the crowd quieted, the CEO stepped aside. Henry, he said, this night belongs to you. Henry hesitated, then stepped up to the microphone. The lights made his palms wet, his throat dry. He took a deep breath, looking at all the faces watching, the same ones that once passed by him without a glance. I never thought I'd stand here, he began, his voice trembling but honest. I've spent most of my life behind doors that others walk through without noticing. And that's all right. It gave me time to see things differently. Time to notice people, small kindnesses, the beauty of being needed even when no one says it. A hush spread through the crowd. Even the cameras seemed to pause. I drew because I couldn't speak, he continued. Every sketch here was me saying, I see you. The cook, the guard, the janitor, people who hold this world together quietly. His eyes found Lena near the back, smiling through tears. And I've learned something. Dignity doesn't come from titles. It comes from the heart you put into what you do. Applause filled the hall, not loud and chaotic, but slow, steady, reverent. Mr. Collins stepped forward, shaking his hand. You reminded us who we are, he said softly. Thank you, Henry. As people dispersed to admire the artwork, Henry wandered the gallery, listening. Did you know he worked here for 20 years? He drew all that during breaks. I wish I saw the world like that. He smiled, humbled by their wonder. Lena found him near the centerpiece sketch, the puddle reflection. You spoke beautifully, she said. I almost didn't, he admitted. My legs were shaking. Maybe that's what made it real. They stood quietly, side by side, until a soft voice behind them spoke. Mr. Blake. He turned to see a young girl, maybe 12, clutching a small notebook. Hi, she said shyly. I draw too, but my friends say art won't take me anywhere. Henry knelt to her height. Then draw anyway, he said gently. Art doesn't have to take you anywhere. Sometimes it brings people to you. Her eyes brightened. Will you sign my book? He smiled, taking the pen she offered. Of course. He signed his name slowly, adding beneath it, Keep seeing what others miss. Her mother mouthed, Thank you, as they walked away. Lena watched, her heart swelling. You just changed that girl's life. You know. Henry looked after the child and whispered, Maybe she'll draw a world that's kinder than the one I started in. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Later that night, as the crowd thinned, Ryan approached again. Hey, Henry, about tomorrow. Henry smiled knowingly. You mean the interview? Ryan nodded. Yeah. Collins told me you're considering a mentorship program. Henry laughed softly. I said I'd think about it. Teaching art to the maintenance crew? That's something I never pictured. Ryan grinned. You've already been teaching without knowing it. Henry raised an eyebrow. How so? By existing, Ryan said simply, by doing what you do with grace. For a long moment, Henry said nothing. Then, quietly, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Outside, flashes of lightning danced across the sky, but no rain followed. Just light, silent and endless. Lena walked up beside him. Looks like the storm finally gave you peace. Maybe it was never the storm, Henry said, smiling. Maybe it was me learning how to stand in it. She reached for his hand, tentative, honest. He didn't pull away. They stood there, surrounded by art and soft music, two people who had seen each other at their worst and still found something worth holding. And as the night closed around them, the janitor who once waited alone in a cafe was now the man people came to listen to, not because of what he cleaned, but because of what he illuminated. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Henry's story spread beyond the company. Local newspapers ran headlines like From Janitor to Artist, a story of quiet strength. Schools invited him to speak. Community centers hung his sketches on their walls. But with every new light, old shadows began to stir. The more people praised him, the more Henry felt the weight of expectation. He still mopped floors some nights, not out of necessity, but out of comfort. The rhythm of the mop against tile, the silence of an empty building, it grounded him. One evening, as he cleaned the lobby after hours, Ryan walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee again. You're still doing this? Henry smiled faintly. It's what I know. You could stop, you know. You've earned more than this. Henry shook his head. It's not about earning. It's about remembering. This is where I learned who I was. Ryan leaned against the counter, thoughtful. You ever think people will forget? That once the story fades, they'll stop caring. Henry looked up, eyes soft but certain. Maybe, but the people who needed to hear it, they won't forget. That's enough. Ryan nodded, silent. That night, rain began to fall again, not heavy, but persistent. Henry watched the drops streak the glass, distorting the world outside like one of his sketches. He smiled faintly. The world always looked better through imperfection. Then his phone buzzed, a call from Mr. Collins. Henry, the CEO said, his voice tight, I need you to come to the office. Something's happened. Henry's chest tightened. Is everything all right? I wish I could say yes. Just come. When Henry arrived, the conference room lights were still on. A few department heads sat grim-faced, and on the screen behind them was a news article. Viral artist Henry Blake under fire, accused of plagiarizing corporate photography. His stomach dropped. Collins sighed. Someone leaked images claiming your sketches were traced from internal photos. It's spreading fast. We know it's nonsense, but PR's panicking. Henry's throat went dry. I didn't trace anything, so every drawing came from memory, from nights I saw those moments. I know, Collins said firmly. We'll handle it, but until it clears, we might need to pause the upcoming exhibits. Pause. The word hit harder than it should. Henry nodded numbly. I understand. Ryan burst into the room minutes later. Who did this? No idea, Collins said. Probably someone bitter. The internet's cool when it smells sincerity. Henry stayed at the table, jaw tight. Maybe I flew too close to the light. Ryan slammed his hand down. No, you earned that light. Collins placed a steady hand on Henry's shoulder. Truth survives noise. Son, just keep being who you are. Henry nodded, forcing a weak smile. I've had worse things said to me than fraud. At least this time, I have people beside me. When he left the building, the rain had turned fierce, pounding the streets, washing reflections into blurred streaks. He walked home soaked, his sketchbook clutched to his chest beneath his jacket. That night, he sat at his desk, staring at the blank page. His hand trembled, pencil hovering. He thought of every face he'd drawn, every soul who'd trusted him. He couldn't let lies erase that. He began to draw, not people this time, but light. A single bulb in darkness, glowing faintly, surrounded by shadow. It was simple, pure, and somehow it felt like truth. When he finished, he photographed it and posted it online with just one caption. Let them say what they will. I'll keep drawing the truth. Within hours, comments flooded in. We believe you, Henry. Your art changed my life. They can't fake art. The storm outside roared, but inside, something steady held him together, the same resilience that had carried him through years of silence. Lena called him the next morning. I saw the news, she said softly. Are you okay? I will be, he said. The truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs patience. If I could take the hate for you, I would. He smiled sadly. You already took the first step when you stopped seeing me through shame. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive, if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. Days passed. The noise online began to fade, drowned by an outpouring of support. Other artists came forward, defending him. Former co-workers posted stories about his late-night drawings. Then, one morning, a headline appeared. Evidence clears Henry Blake. Photos do not match original artworks. Collins called him immediately. It's over, Henry. You're vindicated. Henry exhaled. Finally, the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding for days. Then let's not waste time being bitter, he said quietly. Let's use it to be better. Outside, sunlight cut through the retreating clouds, spilling across the window. The storm was gone, but it had taught him something. Even light needs darkness to prove its worth. The morning the truth cleared his name, Henry walked into the building the same way he always had, quietly, humbly. But this time, people stopped what they were doing. They clapped. It wasn't loud or rehearsed. It was raw. Secretaries, security guards, interns, people from every floor lined the whole way as he passed. Some just smiled through tears. Others whispered, "We knew it." Ryan was waiting at the end of the corridor with a wide grin. Told you, man, the truth always wins. Might take a storm or two, but it wins. Henry chuckled softly, shaking his head. I guess storms wash the floor clean, huh? Exactly, Ryan said. Guess that's your specialty. Laughter rippled through the crowd, warm, healing, genuine. Later that day, Mr. Collins called him into his office again. The same place where his world had once cracked open in fear now felt like sunlight on wood. Collins gestured for him to sit. I've been thinking. When we started this, it was about recognition. But now, it's become something more. People are talking about kindness, about dignity, about how we treat those who make our lives easier. Henry nodded quietly. It's strange. All I did was draw what I saw. Colin smiled. And you reminded us how to see. So I want to propose something. He slid a folder across the desk. The company is launching a foundation in your name, the Blake Initiative. Scholarships for underprivileged youth in maintenance and service work who dream beyond their uniforms. And I'd like you to lead it. Henry blinked, stunned. Me? Lead? Yes. You will have a team. You will teach, mentor, and inspire. Henry's throat tightened. Sir, I'm honored, but I'm not qualified. Collins interrupted gently. Henry, you've lived what this foundation stands for. That's more than any title can give. For a long moment, Henry couldn't speak. Then, quietly, I accept. Collins extended his hand. Then let's make sure no one ever feels invisible again. A month later, the Blake Initiative launched with quiet grace. The first seminar was held in the same atrium where his art had hung. The walls were filled with photos of everyday workers, bus drivers, janitors, cooks, gardeners, smiling proudly beside their own stories. Henry stood at the front, holding a microphone, facing 50 young people. Some wore paint-stained shirts, some worn-out shoes, all with eyes that carried the same kind of hunger he once had. I used to think invisibility was my curse, he began, his voice steady but soft. But I learned it was my gift. It let me see the world others missed. You don't have to be seen by everyone to matter. You just have to keep seeing the good, even when no one's looking. The room fell silent, heart suspended between admiration and tears. He smiled faintly. And if you ever feel small, remember this. The tallest buildings still rest on floors someone cleaned. Applause erupted, echoing through the space like a promise. That evening, after the seminar ended, Lena joined him by the glass doors overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Do you ever think about that first night? She asked. He laughed quietly. Every time I see a mop bucket. She smiled. You've forgiven me, haven't you? He turned to her, eyes warm. Lena, forgiveness isn't a gift I give you. It's the peace I give myself. Holding on to bitterness is like trying to keep rain in your hands. You only end up empty. She looked down, tears glinting. You've changed, Henry. He shook his head gently. Maybe I just finally became who I was meant to be. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. They stood in silence, the city lights flickering awake below them. Henry's reflection on the glass modes of the skyline, two worlds that once seemed so far apart now perfectly aligned. Lena slipped her hand into his, quiet and sure. You know, she said softly, you didn't just clean floors. You cleaned hearts. Henry chuckled, eyes glistening. Then I guess my work's not done. The laughter that followed wasn't the echo of pain anymore. It was a sound of healing, of grace found in places no one thought to look. He watched the last light fade behind the skyline, feeling the weight of his journey, from janitor to artist, from unseen to unforgettable. But deep down, he knew his story wasn't about titles or redemption. It was about seeing and helping the world remember how to see. Weeks passed, and the Blake Initiative grew faster than anyone expected. Newspapers wrote about it. Schools requested workshops, and the company built a small art studio inside the lobby, open for anyone who wanted to draw during their breaks. Every corner of the building now carried a little more warmth, a little more humanity. Henry became a familiar face in places he once slipped through unnoticed. Yet, he stayed the same, still the man who stopped to hold open doors, who thanked every guard by name, who carried quiet gratitude like a second heartbeat. One afternoon, he was cleaning the small studio space. Old habits die kindly, when a little boy walked in. He looked about Tate, carrying a sketch pad bigger than his chest. Are you the janitor who makes art? The boy asked shyly. Henry smiled. I guess that's one way to say it. My teacher showed us your story, the boy said. She said you draw people so they don't feel small. Henry crouched down to meet his eyes. That's right. Everyone deserves to be seen. The boy grinned, pulling out a page. Then can you draw me? Henry laughed softly. Only if you draw me back. They sat together at the small table, pencils scratching quietly. The boy's tongue peeked out in concentration, while Henry's lines flowed with practiced ease. When they finished, they swapped pages. The boy's drawing was messy, uneven, but beautiful. "You made my eyes too kind," Henry said, smiling. The boy shrugged. "That's how they look to me." And in that moment, Henry realized something profound. It wasn't about capturing what was real. It was about revealing what was true. Lena appeared at the doorway, watching the scene. Her eyes softened as she whispered, "You were made for this." Henry looked at the boy, then back at her. "Maybe I was just waiting for someone to remind me." The boy ran off to show his teacher, leaving Henry and Lena in the quiet hum of afternoon light. She walked over, resting a hand on his arm. "You know, if someone told me a year ago that the man I once hesitated to sit with would change the world." He chuckled. "You'd have laughed." "I'd have missed out," she said gently. Henry smiled, eyes glistening. "Then I'm glad you stayed long enough to see past them up." Later that week, Faces of Our Foundation reopened, this time in a public museum downtown. The entrance was packed, but the crowd wasn't just executives or artists. It was bus drivers, cleaners, delivery workers, nurses, the people who built the world quietly. Henry walked through the exhibit, stopping at a new addition near the end, a portrait of a young janitor sitting by a cafe window, waiting. Rain streaked the glass, and on the table lay a small folded paper with a sketch of a yellow dress. Lena stood beside him, tears glimmering. "That's the night it all began, isn't it?" He nodded. "Yeah. The night I thought I was being mocked turned out to be the night I met purpose." She took his hand. "And maybe the night I met grace." If the story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." As the crowd thinned, Mr. Collins approached with a gentle smile. "You did it. Henry, you turned hurt into hope." Henry looked around the room, at faces shining in awe and gratitude. "No, sir," he said softly. "We did it, every person who ever felt unseen. I just gave them a mirror." Collins placed a hand on his shoulder. "You gave them more than that. You gave them light." Henry smiled, glancing toward the final sketch in the exhibit, the one he'd drawn after the storm. The single bulb glowing in darkness. Beneath it, engraved words read, "Let them say what they will. I'll keep drawing the truth." Lena leaned against him, whispering, "You think your story's done?" He shook his head, eyes reflecting the golden light. "No, stories like this don't end. They ripple." They stood in silence, surrounded by art that once belonged to shadows, now bathed in light. Outside, the night was calm. Streetlights shimmered in puddles, reflections that no longer distorted, but danced. Henry smiled at the world he once cleaned, now cleaner in ways no mop could touch. And as the doors closed behind him, his heart carried a quiet certainty that the greatest masterpieces aren't drawn on canvas, but in the kindness we choose again and again when no one's watching. Moral warmth. Even in a world quick to judge and slow to see, kindness remains the truest art form. The titles we hold may fade, but the hearts we touch never do.